The vast meeting hall of the Galactic Concordiat fell silent as Admiral Zexitara stepped up to the speaking platform. His forearms moved in the formal greeting pattern of his people, the Vesperi, while his transparent wings caught the light from the giant stars visible through the crystal dome above. "Honored council members," he began, his translator making his clicks and buzzes into words all 17 species could understand. "For too long we have watched the humans with growing worry. They are a danger we can no longer ignore." Around the circular table, representatives from the most powerful space-traveling races in the known galaxy shifted in their various seats. Some had tentacles, others had multiple eyes, and a few glowed with internal light. All of them turned, their attention to the large screen as Admiral Zexitara activated it with a wave of his upper right hand. "Humans reached the stars only 30 years ago," he continued. "In that short time, look what they have done." The screen showed a map of space with small blue dots representing human settlements. There were 27 of them, spread across an area that should have taken centuries to colonize. "No other species in our 10,000-year history has moved so quickly, or so aggressively," Zexitara said. "They breed faster, build faster, and change faster than any race we have ever encountered." The council members watched as more images appeared on the screen. Humans in spacesuits building structures at impossible speeds. Human ships moving in ways that defied normal space travel rules. Human soldiers fighting with strange determination against threats that would make most species retreat. "Most troubling," Zexitara said, his wings now vibrating with emotion, "is how they think. Where we seek peace and order, they embrace conflict and call it competition. Where we value staying the same, they constantly change and call it innovation. They are unpredictable. They are dangerous." Lorvex of the crystal-based Draxians raised a glowing appendage. "Perhaps they are simply different, not dangerous. We should try to understand them better before taking action." Admiral Zexitara clicked in frustration. "We have studied them for 30 years. Let me show you what our research has found." New images appeared on the screen. Classified recordings showed human Marines fighting against Draxian pirates, moving with shocking speed despite wearing heavy armor. Another recording showed human diplomats somehow understanding the complex greeting rituals of the gas-dwelling Marigi on their first meeting, something that should have been impossible without years of study. Most disturbing of all was footage of human engineers taking apart Concordiat technology and rebuilding it in ways its original creators had never imagined. "They learn too quickly," Zexitara said. "They adapt too well. Our best calculations show that at their current rate of expansion and technological development, they will match our combined power in just 50 years and exceed it shortly after." The council chamber filled with nervous sounds as the 17 species communicated their alarm in their various ways. Grand Counselor Thex Kalin, the eldest of the jellyfish-like Aquari, floated forward in his water tank. "What do you propose, Admiral?" "We must act now while we still hold the advantage," Zexitara said firmly. "A quick, overwhelming show of force. We control the spaceways between their colonies. We can isolate them, restrict them, and force them to accept limitations on their expansion and technology." "You are speaking of war," observed Thexa Kalin. "I am speaking of survival," Zexitara replied. "Either we control the humans now, or they will control us later." After hours of debate, the vote was taken. The result was clear. 16 species in favor of military action, with only the Draxians voting against. The Galactic Concordiat, ruler of half the Milky Way galaxy for thousands of years, would go to war with the newcomers from Earth. At exactly 0600 Universal Standard Time, the declaration was sent simultaneously to all human worlds. The Concordiat deployed its massive fleet, 12,000 warships in total, across human space in a perfectly coordinated movement that had been practiced for months in secret. The Concordiat's most advanced thinking machines had calculated every detail of the coming war. They predicted a 3-month campaign with minimal Concordiat losses. The humans would be overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology, forced to surrender and then safely contained. Deep beneath Mount Cheyenne on Earth, General Maya Santiago stood in the United Nations Space Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching Concordiat fleet. Her dark eyes narrowed as she read the formal declaration of war that had just arrived. "They actually did it," she said, her voice calm despite the circumstances. Just as our intelligence predicted. Around her, officers and officials waited, tensely for her reaction. Some looked scared, others looked worried, but no one panicked. Colonel Jensen, her second-in-command, stepped forward. "All defense systems are ready, General. The special protocols have been in place for 5 years, just waiting for this moment." General Santiago nodded. "And our hidden fleets?" "In position. The enemy has no idea they exist." Santiago turned to face the room full of humanity's top military leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have been preparing for this possibility since we first detected the Concordiat's observation satellites in our space 25 years ago. Operation Trojan Horse is now active." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. "They think they know what humans are capable of based on what we've allowed them to see. Today, they learn how wrong they are." The general's lips curved into a small smile that would have terrified the Concordiat leaders had they been able to see it. It wasn't a smile of fear or worry. It was a smile of anticipation. Santiago turned back to the main screen and gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. Execute Phase 1. Throughout human space, hidden systems activated. Secret ships emerged from concealment, and special forces teams, trained for this exact scenario, moved into position. The Galactic Concordiat had declared war on humanity, believing it would be a 3-month campaign ending in human defeat. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Admiral Krav of the Meridian Forces stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance. Through the viewing screen, he could see the blue-green planet of New Terra, the largest human colony world, growing larger as his fleet approached. 12 massive warships moved into position around him, each one powerful enough to destroy an entire city with a single blast. "Begin the attack sequence," Admiral Krav ordered, his scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the tactical displays. "Target their military bases first, then communication centers." His crew, all members of the reptilian Meridian species, moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment for months. The attack on New Terra would show these upstart humans the true meaning of galactic power. "Orbital bombardment ready, Admiral," reported his weapons officer. "Fire," Krav commanded. Brilliant beams of energy shot from the Concordiat ships, streaking toward the planet's surface. On the tactical display, 12 key military installations were marked as targets. The energy beams hit each one precisely. Krav waited for the satisfying explosions, for the fires and destruction that would follow, but the tactical display showed something unexpected. 0 energy discharge on the planet's surface. "Report," Krav demanded. His tactical officer looked confused, pressing buttons rapidly on his console. "Sir, the beams, they didn't hit anything. Solid. It's as if the targets weren't really there." "Impossible," Krav muttered. "Scan again." Before the officer could comply, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Admiral, objects approaching from the planet's moon," the sensor operator shouted. On the main screen, 12 small objects had detached from what they had believed was a lifeless moon. These objects accelerated toward the Concordiat fleet at speeds their sensors could barely track. "Identify those vessels," Krav ordered, a feeling of unease growing in his stomach. "They're human ships, sir, but they don't match any design we've ever seen before. They're too small to be warships." Krav was about to order evasive action when the first of the human vessels reached his fleet. Instead of firing weapons, they simply passed through his ship's shields as if they weren't there. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "No technology can penetrate our phase shields." Then, systems throughout his flagship began shutting down. Propulsion, weapons, long-range communications all went dark simultaneously. The same was happening to every ship in his fleet. On the tactical display, which was running on emergency power, Krav watched in horror as the small human vessels attached themselves to each of his ships like parasites, somehow bypassing every defense system the Concordiat had developed over thousands of years. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. The Concordiat's carefully planned first strike found only empty targets, sophisticated holograms concealing the true location of human defenses. What appeared on their scans to be military bases were actually elaborate decoys designed to attract exactly the kind of attack the Concordiat had launched. On the Concordiat command ship Decisive Victory, Supreme Commander Vex Neal received increasingly panicked reports from his fleet. 17 ships disabled near Earth. 42 ships immobilized at Alpha Centauri. Entire fleet at Proxima Colony reporting system failures. Vex Neal's antennae twitched in distress. How are they doing this? Where are they getting this technology? His strategic advisor, a member of the ancient and wise Quarian species, looked deeply troubled. It appears the humans have been deceiving us. What they showed us of their capabilities was carefully controlled. They wanted us to underestimate them. But our intelligence gathered data for decades, Vex Neal protested. Yes, the Quarian said quietly. They allowed us to gather exactly the data they wanted us to see. On Earth, in the underground command center, General Santiago walked between stations, reviewing updates from across the battlefield.
Status report, she requested. Colonel Jensen consulted his tablet. Operation Trojan Horse is proceeding exactly as planned, General. Our stealth teams have disabled 40% of the Concordiat fleet. Casualty reports show 0 human losses
and minimal alien injuries. We're being careful, just as you ordered. Santiago nodded with satisfaction. And the EMP devices? Working perfectly. The specialized electromagnetic pulses are shutting down their systems without permanently damaging them or harming their crews. On the main screen, green dots representing human ships moved with purpose through the red cloud of disabled Concordiat vessels. Each green dot was a small team of ships, crewed by specially trained soldiers who had practiced this operation hundreds of times. What about their central command communication? Santiago asked. A young communications officer looked up from her station. Completely disrupted, General. We've isolated each of their battle groups from one another. They can't coordinate their attacks anymore. Santiago allowed herself a small smile. And our message to their troops? Being broadcast now, in all 17 Concordiat languages. Across space, confused and frightened, Concordiat soldiers were receiving the same message on their emergency channels. Your leaders have sent you to an unnecessary war. We do not wish to harm you. Your ships will be towed to neutral space and you will be allowed to return home once peace is established. Resistance will not be met with violence unless you endanger our people. 3 hours into the conflict, Commander, Ellison Drake stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Thermopylae, watching as his small fleet surrounded a group of disabled Concordiat ships. Boarding teams ready, Commander, his first officer reported. Drake nodded. Remind them, no casualties unless absolutely necessary. These aren't our enemies. They're future allies who don't know it yet. The first officer looked confused. Sir? They declared war on us. Drake's expression was firm but not unkind. Their leaders declared war based on fear and ignorance. Most of these soldiers were just following orders. We're going to show them that humans aren't the monsters they were told we are. Through the viewport, Drake could see the massive Concordiat flagship drifting powerless in space. Using technology that the aliens had never seen before, his ships had phased through their defenses and disabled their systems without firing a single destructive shot. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Concordiat flagship. Their admiral is requesting to speak with you. Drake straightened his uniform. Put him through. The screen flickered to life, showing the reptilian face of Admiral Krav. The alien's eyes were wide with a mix of fear and confusion. How? Krav asked simply. How did you defeat our entire fleet in just 3 hours? Drake looked directly at the defeated admiral. Because you only saw what we wanted you to see. For years you watched us, studied us, and thought you understood humans. But you only saw our public face. Today you met the rest of us. What will happen now? Krav asked, his voice subdued. Now, Drake replied calmly, we talk about peace, the real kind, not built on fear but on understanding. This war is already over, Admiral. It ended the moment it began. 6 hours into the conflict, the Concordiat's carefully planned attack had fallen apart completely. What should have been a perfectly coordinated operation now resembled a scattered collection of individual ships in small groups, each cut off from central command and unable to receive new orders. On the Concordiat capital world of Nexus Prime, Grand Strategist Velamore paced nervously in the High Command Center. The tall, slender alien's skin had turned a pale blue, a sign of extreme stress in her species. Around her, analysts and military advisors worked frantically at their stations, trying to make sense of the reports coming in from across the battlefield. Want answers? Velamore demanded, her voice echoing in the large chamber. How did they disable our ship so quickly? Why don't our shields work against their weapons? Where did they hide an entire defensive fleet that we never detected? An intelligence officer approached cautiously. Grand Strategist, we have completed the preliminary analysis of the human technology being used against us. It's troubling. Explain, Velamore ordered. The officer activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the human vessels. These are not new ships built in secret. They are modified versions of ships we've seen before. The humans didn't hide an entire fleet. They hid the true capabilities of the fleet we already knew about. Velamore stared at the display in disbelief. Are you saying they've had these technologies all along? Yes, Grand Strategist. Based on the energy signatures and manufacturing patterns, many of these systems have existed for at least 10 years. They simply never used them where we could see. The implications hit Velamore like a physical blow. The Concordiat had based its entire war strategy on intelligence that was fundamentally flawed. They had observed humans for decades, cataloging their technologies, studying their military capabilities, and analyzing their strategic thinking. But apparently, the humans had been aware of this surveillance the entire time and had deliberately shown only what they wanted the Concordiat to see. What about their weapons? Velamore asked, dreading the answer. The intelligence officer looked even more uncomfortable. That's the strangest part, Grand Strategist. They're not using what we would recognize as weapons at all. They're using highly focused tools that temporarily disable rather than destroy. They could have annihilated our ships, but they've chosen not to. In space near the human colony of New Horizon, Commander Ellison Drake stood on the bridge of the Thermopylae, coordinating the operation to secure a group of disabled Concordiat vessels. Through the view screen, he could see human boarding teams moving efficiently between the alien ships. Status report, Drake requested. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Chen, looked up from her tablet. All systems proceeding as planned. Sir, boarding teams have secured 12 Concordiat vessels without casualties. 3 more are in progress. And the alien crews? Confused but cooperative for the most part. A few tried to resist, but our non-lethal suppression tools handled it. Some are actually asking for asylum. Drake raised an eyebrow. Asylum? Already? Chen nodded. Apparently not all Concordiat species were equally enthusiastic about this war. Some of the lower-ranking crew members claim they were forced to participate against their will. Interesting, Drake mused. Make sure we document all asylum requests according to protocol. This could be useful in the peace negotiations. A communication officer called out from her station. Commander, we're receiving a direct transmission from a Meridian battlecruiser. Their captain is requesting to speak with you personally. Put it through, Drake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Meridian officer. Unlike Admiral Krav, this Meridian's scales were a lighter color, marking him as younger and lower ranking. Human commander, the Meridian, began. I am Sub-Captain Sear of the Concordiat vessel Righteous Fury. I wish to arrange the immediate surrender of my ship and crew. Drake kept his expression neutral. Your surrender is accepted, Sub-Captain. May I ask why you're surrendering before we've even approached your vessel? The Meridian looked uncomfortable. Because I have seen how you treat your captured enemies. Word is spreading through the fleet. You disable rather than destroy. You offer medical care to the injured. You treat prisoners with respect." He paused. "These are not the actions of the bloodthirsty barbarians we were told humans are." On Earth, General Santiago reviewed the latest battlefield updates with her senior staff. The large screens around the command center showed the status of operations across human space. 8 hours in, and Phase 1 is nearly complete, Colonel Jensen reported. 70% of the Concordiate fleet has been neutralized. Our casualties remain minimal, just 3 injuries from a boarding operation that encountered unexpected resistance. Santiago nodded. "And our deep penetration teams?" A special operations officer stepped forward. "All teams are in position, General. They've successfully infiltrated the major Concordiate command centers on 6 different worlds. The quantum network override is ready to activate on your command." Santiago checked the time. "Proceed with Phase 2. Throughout Concordiate space, something unprecedented began to happen. On secure communication channels that were supposed to be impossible to breach, humans started broadcasting messages, but these weren't generic messages. They were specifically tailored to each individual Concordiate species, delivered in their native languages and cultural contexts. To the Vespiri, humans spoke of honor and duty, using ancient quotations from Vespiri religious texts. To the Meridians, they appealed to practical concerns about resource allocation and military efficiency. To the Aquari, they discussed philosophical principles that were sacred in Aquari culture. Most disturbing to Concordiate leaders was that these messages referenced historical events, cultural nuances, and even religious beliefs that should have been unknown to outsiders. Somehow humans had gained deep understanding of each species' psychology and values, understanding that went far beyond what could be gathered through standard intelligence methods. In the Concordiate Council chambers, emergency alarms sounded as the security systems detected unprecedented breaches in their quantum networks. Counselor Thexkalin and the other leaders watched in horror as their most secure screens displayed a simple message. "We know where your families live. We know where your children study. We know your sacred places and treasured historical sites. We have chosen not to target any of them. Remember this choice we've made when peace is discussed." The message was repeated in all 17 Concordiate languages, each version perfectly adapted to the cultural sensitivities of its intended audience. Admiral Zexitera, who had so confidently advocated for war just 8 hours earlier, stared at the screen with his wings completely still, a sign of shock in his species. "How could they possibly know so much about us?" he whispered. "It's as if they've been studying us for centuries, not decades." Counselor Thexkalin's water tank bubbled as the ancient Aquari considered their situation. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we have made a terrible mistake in judging these humans. They are not the simple, aggressive creatures we thought they were." "What are they, then?" asked another counselor. "Something far more dangerous," Thexkalin replied. "They are unpredictable, but they also appear to be merciful. We should be grateful for that mercy, because I now believe they could have destroyed us completely if they had chosen to." 10 hours into the conflict, the Concordiate Council had gathered for an emergency session. The Grand Chamber, normally filled with confidence and order, now hummed with fear and confusion. Representatives from all 17 species sat around the circular table, many showing physical signs of distress according to their biology. Drooping tentacles, faded skin colors, erratic movement patterns. Admiral Zexitara, who had led the call for war that morning, now faced his colleagues with what his species would consider the ultimate humiliation. His wings completely still and transparent, a sign of total submission. "The military situation is beyond our control," he admitted, his voice flat. 80% of our fleet has been neutralized. Our secure networks have been compromised at every level. Most disturbing of all, the humans have begun broadcasting directly to our civilian populations, explaining their perspective on the conflict. This last revelation caused a wave of alarm to sweep through the council. "What are they telling our people?" demanded the Draxian representative, his crystalline body flashing with anxious light patterns. "The truth," Zexitara replied simply, "that we declared war based on fear rather than provocation. that humans have chosen to disable rather than destroy our ships, that they seek peaceful resolution despite our aggression. The ancient Aquari counselor, Thexcalon, moved his tentacles in a pattern indicating deep thought. The question remains, how have they achieved such complete dominance so quickly? How could they know our vulnerabilities so precisely? Before anyone could answer, a communication officer entered the chamber and approached the council leader with visible nervousness. "Esteemed council," the officer announced, "a human representative has requested permission to address this body." Silence fell over the chamber. After a moment of stunned hesitation, Thexcalon gave permission with a gentle wave of his tentacles. A hologram appeared in the center of the council chamber, showing a human woman in her mid-40s with short dark hair, wearing simple civilian clothes rather than a military uniform. "Distinguished council members," she began, "I am Dr. Elin Novak, xenoanthropologist from Earth. I appreciate your willingness to hear me at this difficult moment." The council leader recovered his composure first. "You are a scientist, not a military leader or diplomat. Why do you address us?" Dr. Novak smiled slightly. "Because what's happening isn't ultimately about military power or diplomacy. It's about understanding. My specialty is understanding other species and cultures. For the past 20 years, I've led Earth's Xenocultural Understanding Project, studying the 17 species of the Concordiat." The Vesperi representative clicked his mouthparts in disbelief. "Impossible. Our surveillance would have detected such a large research operation." "No," Novak replied calmly. "You were looking for weapons development, fleet movements, military training. You weren't looking for thousands of humans quietly learning your languages, studying your histories, reading your literature, and understanding how you think." She gestured, and the hologram expanded to show hundreds of human researchers in various settings, libraries filled with books from different Concordiat worlds, classrooms where humans practiced alien languages, laboratories where they studied alien psychology. "While you were watching us trying to determine if we were a threat," Novak continued, "we were watching you trying to understand who you are. The difference is that we succeeded." In the Earth Command Center, General Santiago watched the council session through a secure feed. Colonel Jensen stood beside her, his expression troubled. "Do you think they'll understand what Dr. Novak is telling them?" Jensen asked. Santiago shrugged. "That's why we chose her instead of a military leader or politician. She can explain it in terms they might accept. The truth is always better than continued confusion." Back in the council chamber, a Meridian representative raised a clawed hand. "This still doesn't explain your technological advantages. Our scientists believed many of your capabilities were theoretically impossible." Dr. Novak nodded. "That brings me to the second part of my explanation. What you're experiencing isn't primarily the result of superior technology, though we do have some advantages you didn't know about. It's the result of something your evolutionary paths never required: imagination." She paused, letting the translation systems catch up as the alien representatives processed her words. "Most Concordiat species evolved in stable environments with few predators," Novak explained. "You developed intelligence through cooperation and specialization. Humans evolved as prey animals who became predators. We survived by anticipating threats, imagining possibilities, and preparing for scenarios that hadn't happened yet." The hologram changed to show early human history. Small groups of primitive humans planning hunts, creating tools, developing strategies to survive against larger predators. "We call it theory of mind, the ability to put ourselves in someone else's position, to understand how they think and predict what they might do. For most of your species, this ability is limited to members of your own kind. Humans developed the ability to extend it to different species, and eventually to hypothetical beings we hadn't even met yet." The council chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. "For 20 years, Novak continued, we've been running simulations of potential conflicts with your species. Not just strategic simulations, but psychological ones. We asked, how would the Vesperi react to this scenario? What would motivate a Meridian commander to surrender rather than fight? Which approach would resonate most with Aquari philosophy? She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or sensory organs of each council member. We've fought this war in our minds millions of times before today. That's why we were prepared for your attacks. That's why we knew exactly which systems to target on your ships. That's why our messages speak directly to the cultural values of each of your species. A Draxian counselor's crystalline body flashed with patterns of realization. But that doesn't explain your technology. How did you develop weapons that bypass our shields? How did you hack our quantum networks? Because necessity drives innovation, Novak replied. On Earth, we spent thousands of years trying to kill each other before we learned cooperation. Our technology evolved through conflict and competition. Yours evolved through consensus and gradual improvement. Both are valid paths, but ours prepared us for war in ways yours couldn't. She gestured again, and the hologram showed human history, centuries of warfare driving rapid technological advancement, followed by periods of peace where those technologies were adapted for civilian use. We didn't want this war, Novak said, her voice gentle but firm. But we've been preparing for it since we first detected your observation satellites in our space. We knew you were watching, and we knew you might eventually fear us enough to attack. So we showed you what we wanted, you to see, and kept our full capabilities in reserve. As Dr. Novak finished speaking, reports began pouring into the council chamber. Human forces had secured the Concordiat's major shipyards, weapons facilities, and strategic resource deposits, all without a single alien casualty. The message was clear. The war was over. It had effectively ended the moment it began. 12 hours into the conflict, the situation had completely reversed from what the Concordiat had planned. Instead of human worlds under blockade, it was Concordiat command centers that were surrounded. Instead of human military forces in disarray, it was the Concordiat fleet that drifted powerless through space. On the bridge of the United Earth flagship Peacekeeper, General Maya Santiago prepared to deliver humanity's response to the Concordiat's declaration of war. Behind her stood representatives from over 200 human nations and colonies, a display of unity rarely seen in human history. The large viewscreen showed the Concordiat Council chamber, where the 17 alien species waited with visible anxiety to hear what the humans would demand. Most expected harsh terms after their unprovoked attack. Transmission ready, General, the communications officer reported. Santiago nodded. Begin broadcast. The general stepped forward, her expression calm but firm. Members of the Concordiat Council, I am General Maya Santiago of United Earth Forces. 12 hours ago, you declared war on humanity without provocation. Now I will explain what happens next. She paused, looking directly at each council member through the video feed. Your declaration of war was based on fear, not fact. You saw our rapid expansion and advancement as threats rather than opportunities. You chose aggression without attempting meaningful dialogue. With a gesture, Santiago activated a series of displays. The screens showed images that shocked the council members. Secret Concordiat prison worlds where dissident populations were held. Labor camps where lesser species were forced to work in dangerous conditions. Classified weapons research facilities, conducting experiments that violated the Concordiat's own ethical charter. We've known about these violations for years, Santiago continued. We've monitored your activities just as you monitored ours. The difference is that we chose diplomatic engagement instead of confrontation. Today's demonstration was deliberately restrained, a fraction of our true capability. The council chamber erupted in protests and exclamations until Santiago raised her hand, silencing them with a simple gesture. Our terms are simple, she stated. Immediate and unconditional surrender, followed by governmental reforms under human supervision. Or, she let the alternative hang in the air, unspoken but clear. Council leader Thex Kalen floated forward in his water tank, his tentacles arranged in a pattern signifying formal address. And if we refuse your terms, General, what then? Will you destroy our worlds? Eliminate our species? Is that the true face of humanity? For the first time, Santiago's expression softened slightly. No. Unlike you, we've evolved past genocide as a solution. Our anthropologists understand your species better than you understand yourselves. We know which of your worlds would surrender rather than face conflict. We know which of your populations would welcome human intervention. New images appeared on the screens, detailed maps of Concordiat territories with specific regions highlighted, population statistics showing satisfaction levels with current leadership, economic data revealing disparities between ruling and subject species. Within 3 days, your Concordiat would fragment from within, Santiago explained. Within a week, half your worlds would be seeking human protection. This isn't a threat. It's a sociological certainty based on our understanding of your societies. The evidence was undeniable. Human agents had been embedded in Concordiat society for years, building relationships, understanding grievances, identifying those who would welcome change. The humans had created a comprehensive map of social and political fault lines throughout the Concordiat, ready to apply precise pressure to those weak points if necessary. You declared war because you feared our differences, Santiago concluded. You will surrender because you failed to understand them. In a private chamber adjacent to the council hall, Admiral Zexitara met with the military leaders of the other Concordiat species. Their discussion was heated, with some advocating continued resistance despite the odds. We still have ground forces, argued a Meridian general. We could fight them on our homeworlds. Zextara's wings flickered with bitter amusement. And what would that accomplish besides getting more of our people killed? Did you not see their demonstration today? They disabled our entire fleet without destroying a single ship or taking a single life. What do you think they could do if they chose to be less merciful? So we just surrender? Demanded another officer, slamming a tentacle against the table. We negotiate, Zexitara corrected. While we still have something to negotiate with, the humans have shown restraint. That gives me hope they genuinely want peace, not conquest. On Earth, Colonel Jensen approached General Santiago after the transmission ended. Do you think they'll accept our terms? He asked. Santiago removed her formal jacket, suddenly looking more tired than she had allowed herself to appear during the broadcast. They will. Their military is neutralized, their networks are compromised, and now they know we understand their internal politics better than they do. They have no choice. And the reforms we're demanding? Do you think they'll resist those? The general smiled slightly. Actually, I think many of them will welcome the changes. Dr. Novak's team has identified significant populations across all 17 species who are dissatisfied with the current power structure. The ruling elites have maintained control by convincing their people that external threats require central authority. We've just proven that their protection is an illusion. Jensen nodded thoughtfully. So in a way, this war might end up benefiting both humans and the Concordiat species. That's the plan, Santiago agreed. We never wanted to destroy them, just to change the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. A day of conflict now might prevent centuries of tension later. Back in the council chamber, the 17 representatives debated their options in increasingly desperate tones. We cannot simply surrender to these humans, protested the Vesperi counselor, his wings buzzing with agitation. The Draxian representatives, crystalline form pulsed with calm blue light. I warned this council against military action. Now we face the consequences of that decision. The humans have demonstrated both overwhelming power and unusual restraint. We should be grateful for the latter. But their demands, began another counselor, are reasonable, considering the circumstances, interrupted Thex Kalen. They do not seek territory. They do not demand resources. They ask for reforms that many of our own people have been requesting for generations. The Meridian representative hissed in disagreement. They want to supervise our government. They want to control us. No, Thex Kalen corrected. They want to ensure we do not threaten them again. There is a difference. After hours of heated debate, the council finally reached its decision. It was not unanimous. 3 species voted against, but the majority recognized the reality of their situation. With 14 votes in favor, the Concordiat formally agreed to human terms. Exactly 18 hours after declaring war on humanity, the Galactic Concordiat surrendered unconditionally. What was meant to be a 3-month campaign ending in human submission had instead become a 1-day demonstration of human capabilities ending in Concordiate defeat. As the surrender document was transmitted to Earth, Council Leader Thex Kalin turned to his fellow counselors. Today marks the end of the Concordiate as we have known it. Tomorrow begins something new. Let us hope it is something better. 24 hours after the declaration of war, representatives from all 17 Concordiate species gathered aboard the human diplomatic vessel Pax Humana, which orbited the Concordiate capital world of Nexus Prime. The ship's name, Latin for human peace, seemed either ironic or deeply meaningful, depending on one's perspective. The grand meeting room was designed to accommodate all the different biological needs of the alien representatives. Special atmospheric chambers for gas breathing species stood alongside water tanks for aquatic delegates. The temperature varied in different sections of the room to ensure comfort for all. This careful attention to detail was not lost on the Concordiate representatives. Many had expected to be treated as defeated enemies. Instead, they found themselves welcomed as valued participants in a new beginning. At the center of the room stood a large circular table, a human tradition symbolizing equality among those present. General Santiago entered the room, now dressed in formal diplomatic attire rather than a military uniform. With her came Dr. Novak and several other human representatives from different Earth nations and colonies. "Thank you all for coming," Santiago began. "Today we sign the formal peace agreement between humanity and the Concordiate species. But first, I want to address some concerns many of you have expressed." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each alien representative. "Many of you fear what human oversight will mean for your worlds. You imagine harsh restrictions, military occupation, or the replacement of your culture with ours." A Vesperi representative's wings flickered nervously. "Are such fears not justified? You have defeated us completely. History suggests the victors impose their will on the vanquished." Santiago nodded. "Human history certainly contains many such examples. But we have learned from our past. The terms of our agreement may surprise you." With a gesture, she activated a holographic display showing the peace document. As the terms appeared, translated into all 17 Concordiate languages, murmurs of surprise spread through the room. There were no demands for territory, no claims on resources, no punitive measures against the general Concordiate population. Instead, the terms focused on 3 main points. First, military disarmament under human supervision, with the Concordiate fleet to be reduced by 70%. The remaining ships would be retrofitted for scientific and peacekeeping missions. Second, trials for specific Concordiate leaders who had authorized rights violations against their own citizens or other species. Not mass punishments, but precise accountability for those who had abused power. Third, integration into a new interstellar governance system, one where humans would hold significant influence but not outright control. The system would include protections for minority species and rights for all sentient beings. "As you can see," Santiago continued, "we do not seek to dominate or erase your cultures. We seek partnership, with safeguards to ensure peace." An Aquari delegate moved his tentacles in a pattern indicating cautious optimism. "These terms are more generous than we anticipated. Why show such restraint when you could demand much more?" Dr. Novak stepped forward to answer. "Because sustainable peace comes through cooperation, not subjugation. We've studied your history as well as our own. Empires built on fear eventually collapse. Systems built on mutual benefit endure. As the human terms were communicated across Concordiate space, the reaction was not what many expected. Instead of resentment or resistance, many populations expressed relief or even celebration. The structures humans sought to reform had been oppressing certain species and populations for generations. On the industrial world of Viridian, factory workers from the insectoid Zori species watched the news with their multiple eyes wide in amazement. For centuries, they had been forced to work in dangerous conditions for the benefit of the ruling species. Now, humans promised labor, protections, and representation in the new government. "Did you hear?" One worker clicked to another. "The humans are demanding that all sentient species receive equal protection under the new laws. No more tiered citizenship. In the crystalline cities of Drax, scholars and scientists gathered to discuss the implications. The humans understand the value of knowledge, an elder crystal being resonated to his colleagues. Their peace terms specifically protect academic freedom and scientific exchange. This could begin a renaissance for our people. Even on worlds where the ruling elites had benefited from the old system, the general population seemed ready for change. They had watched how efficiently humans had neutralized the Concordiat's military might, and how carefully they had avoided causing civilian casualties. Such power, used with such restraint, earned reluctant respect even from former enemies. 6 months after the One-Day War, the former Concordiat council chambers hosted the first assembly of the new Galactic Cooperative. The circular chamber had been redesigned, with the hierarchical seating arrangement replaced by a level floor, where all representatives stood as equals. Human diplomatic teams had worked tirelessly during those months, applying their understanding of each species' psychology and cultural values to create governance structures that addressed long-standing grievances. The resulting system was neither purely human nor purely alien, but something new that incorporated the best elements of both. General Santiago, now serving as Earth's representative to the cooperative, watched with satisfaction as delegates from 28 worlds, the 17 former Concordiat species plus the human colonies, took their places in the chamber. Quite a change from 6 months ago, commented Dr. Novak, who stood beside her as a cultural advisor. Santiago nodded. And a better outcome than anyone expected when the war began. In a maximum security facility on a small moon, Admiral Zextara sat in his cell, reviewing the latest news on a tablet. As one of the primary architects of the war, he had been among the few Concordiat leaders sentenced to confinement. His punishment was not harsh by Concordiat standards: comfortable quarters with access to information and occasional visitors. Today, his visitor was Dr. Novak. The human xenoanthropologist had come several times before, always asking questions about Vesperi culture and history for her ongoing research. "I still don't understand," Zexitara admitted as their conversation drew to a close. "With your capabilities, you could have conquered us completely. You could have taken our worlds, our resources, everything. Why this approach?" Novak smiled. "The same imagination that makes us dangerous also lets us envision better possibilities. We've learned through our own bloody history that conquest brings temporary power, but cooperation builds lasting strength." As she left, Zexitara moved to the window of his cell. Outside, he could see human and Vesperi engineers working side by side, adapting older Concordiat technology with new human innovations. The results were ships and devices more advanced than either civilization could have created alone. 1 year ago, he had convinced the Council that humans would destroy the galactic order the Concordiat had built over millennia. Instead, in just 1 day, humans had shown them how much stronger that order could become when built on understanding rather than fear, cooperation rather than control. Looking at the activity outside his window, Zexitara's wings moved in a pattern that, for the first time since the war, indicated hope. The interstellar war against humans had been declared and ended in a day. But its true outcome would echo through the galaxy for centuries to come. The end.